Hi everybody, Jeff Grupp from Praise and Love Ministries. I want to talk to you about the idea that the world chaos that's going on will set up conditions to bring in the Antichrist. Specifically talking about Revelation 13. There's a lot that could be said, but I want to just talk about the general political and economic chaos going on right now with the pandemic also, and how this could be used to bring in the perfect setting for a new one world system of the Antichrist. Now we know there's going to be a one world system in the future because there'll be a one world religion. How do we know that? Because the Bible talks about how the people of the world will all worship the Antichrist. So that means there'll be one religion, Antichrist religion. So it'll be some kind of one world religion that the Antichrist will be using in the future. And so it would seem you have this idea that you break down society economically and politically and sociologically, and you can then rebuild, with all the differences of economics and religions and so forth. If you break that all apart, a new single world, now we've got this single world system with the internet, where there's really one information stream. And so by that you can set up one world religion and one world government. And that would be what appears is in place in this age of information for the Antichrist to set up a one world Antichrist religion. So that's what we're talking about here today. And it appears what's going on now in the world. We can't really say that that's the start of that. In my opinion, it is. Specifically with reference to Revelation 13:1, as I'll discuss in a minute. Why? But it seems that economically, pandemically, and sociologically, things, as we'll discuss in a minute, as you'll see, things are set up right now where if the powers behind the governments of the world, there's the governments of the world and there's the stronger powers behind them. Those stronger powers behind them, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, and so forth, that are really the actual controllers of society, the IMF, the Catholic Church, those trans government powers that control the national governments of the world. The United Nations is another well-known one. It's just openly known that they want and have authority over governments, the heads of governments and so forth. And they do this control by with money, having specific politicians in office in governments that align with them. That's why Trump is so interesting, because he doesn't fit to that mold. As we've seen, the World Health Organization, which is, if you research, is a very corrupt organization. Most people say, oh no, it's a great organization, but they've never researched it. It's very corrupt, as Trump has pointed out. And all of a sudden we find out that there's this weird imbalance of funding where the United States is giving all this money to it, and nobody voted on this. Nobody has any awareness of this. Trump points it out, and the mass media attacks him like crazy for it. But he's really kind of got some good points. Why is this? And what are they doing? They completely fell asleep with coronavirus. So there's all these agencies which have control over various aspects of society: money, medicine, health, and so forth. It's almost like there's a secret government behind the governments that have great control over the world, or almost full control over the world. There's a lot of this going on that's not a secret, and it's even discussed indirectly in universities and mass media and so forth. People aren't putting two and two together. That interest rates, for example, control things like inflation. Inflation controls the business cycle. The business cycle controls all of our lives. But interest rates are not controlled by voting, by the people. It's really just controlled by a couple people in the Federal Reserve, and those people are heavily aligned with not necessarily with the president, with elected leaders, but with agencies higher than them. Those could use situations that are in place now to completely break down society in order to create a one world government and religion system, which is what we're told is coming in the Bible, and which is what the Antichrist will arise from. So that's what we want to talk about. And it seems that that's in place right now. And all that would have to happen is to escalate things from where they are now, and you will get that. Escalate the pandemic and escalate the social unrest. And what we're going to see here in a minute is the social unrest is very clearly being created. There's no mystery here, as we'll see in a minute. It's just being created by the dialogue in the media, which is the mouthpiece of which people are getting their information about the world. That's being created right now, and people are forming their view of the world, and that's evoking police to back off and not use normal force in felony situations like attacking police cars and so forth. So there's a mysterious set of circumstances going on, all in the midst of an already broken down economy in the pandemic. So a very mysterious situation going on. But one, as we'll see, as we're going to get into it right now, is we'll see that could be used to set up a one world religion, which is what will be in place for the Antichrist. Either the Antichrist will create it, or it'll already be in place, the Antichrist can move right into it. If it's the second that's what happens, then the world system with its chaos, two-pronged chaos, unrest, and pandemic could bring that in. So that could fit into prophecy. So I will be discussing certain issues generally about the end times to do with the Antichrist, but I won't be giving you some sort of end times calendar calculated from Scripture. I hold the view that that's not really possible to do that, because if you look at Daniel 12:9, Revelation 13:18, other verses, we know that that's not possible, because to understand all the information in Daniel, Zechariah, Revelation, and so forth, we have to have that information implanted into our consciousnesses by God. That's how you understand all the end times events and what's going on and so forth. And that's why so many will be caught off guard. The non-believers, the unchosen, will be caught off guard, not those who are have been appointed to eternal life. It's very there's a lot of misinformation about this in the world, and there's this belief that everybody's gonna be shocked and nobody will know what's coming. Just go look at verses like Hebrews 10:25, which says that believers will see the day approaching. They'll see the signs. There's all kinds of in all the Gospels and all over the place. The start of Revelation, where it's very clear that the believers will have signs that they will see, and they'll know. Hey, let's go to the mountains. It's coming. The day is coming. Let's go look up at the sky and wait for the sky to split and wait for the Lord. And then the non-believers will be caught off guard. So anyway, but that's not the topic of this. This video is speculative. It could be wrong. I'll only be using Bible verses. I'm not going to use somebody's theory on end times stuff or Antichrist stuff and so forth. I'll only be using Bible verses to do this analysis. And I'll try to make the analysis as empirical as possible. And also, this could be, what's going on now could just be an introductory template where we'll be using a larger scale in the future. We'll just have to see. It's not like it's all going down now or something. It could be, but it's likely there'll be waves of pandemic and waves of the chaos that's happening to bring in one world religion, which the book of Revelation talks about. So let's get into all this information right now. You could look at it in such a way where out of chaos and societal breakdown, a new one world religion will be set up. And in order to do that, you have to have a breakdown of society. So what's happened now is you've got people that are idle with lots of time on their hands and sort of out of their element, not at work and so forth. And also you have probably people stressed with money. You could even have people hungry, which these situations are known to cause riots, especially among the poor and the younger. And those without much, the system has not been felt to work in their favor much. So they rebel against the system with little to lose. So what we seem to have happened over the last week is you have a situation where a police officer killed a person. The police officer obviously made a serious mistake, but the point is that you have this situation where now all police officers are being told through the mass media that the police officer that made that mistake in Minneapolis is now charged with murder. So that's going to make all the police officers say, be really careful of what they're doing, put them on the defensive rather than the offensive in keeping order and justice. And then you've got situations on the news, such as this, what you're seeing here, with the police officer charging. Clearly this police car is under serious attack. There's police cars being burned and so forth all around right now and flipped over. So there's people in this one, so they very well, as far as they know, their police car could just be about ready to be burned and tipped over and so forth, and they don't want to have to be running out of the car because they'll be seriously attacked by this crazed mob. So what they do is they clear out everybody so they can get through. But what is the story in the news? Were they using excessive force? Now we've got a government official in New York saying they should be charged with this. Now all the people attacking a building, all the people attacking the police car, that's not discussed, as these people under normal circumstances would be arrested. I'm a chaplain in a jail, a preacher in a jail, and many of the guys I talk to have serious offenses for attacking police officers. Or just something like not stopping for a police officer in their car, and they go to jail for sometimes a year for that. So here you've got a mob of people committing a felony, and the news doesn't discuss that. What they discuss is the police officer out of place for trying to protect themselves. So you've got this amazingly backward situation where this message is sort of being conveyed through the mass media, where police officers are going to hear that they better not use any force, or else it'll be shown. I mean, a lot of the stories in the news right now are not like this in Grand Rapids here. Oh, look at this woman just in plain view with no police officers around her, just plain view of the Wood TV's camera, trying to smash a building with no fear of any consequence. The issue is often, did a police officer use too much force in arresting one of the, quote, protesters, unquote, which is really somebody committing a felony, destroying, doing a break-in of a building. When you break a bank's window, that's essentially a break-in, that's many years in prison from my knowledge of inmates I work with in the Van Buren County Jail. So you've got this interesting situation where the masses of lower income younger people in the United States are watching this on TV and realizing, hey, there's no consequence. These people are just smashing windows and doing whatever they want, and there might be some tear gas thrown. I need to move a mob back or something, or in Los Angeles might be a couple hundred arrests. But in general, there's not much consequence going on here, so we can go out and do whatever we want. So the media, in a sense, the way the situation is set up is in a sense showing that police officers better back off because they can't use excessive force. There's no discussion of the felonies being committed by the masses of people attacking police cars and breaking into buildings and destroying city property. That's off the table, that discussion. And so there's no consequence that's seen, and little police resistance that's seen. Seen that, that shows you that the police officers are confused and they're being threatened by, they're sort of scared that they better not touch the mob of crazed looters, or else they will be accused of using excessive force. So this overall atmosphere is being presented to lower income, younger people in America, where you can go out and loot and destroy property with no real consequence. So the media is kind of encouraging people to go out and do that activity. So you should see an escalation of this rioting and looting by the idle, low income or no income people. So it's almost like the media is encouraging this. It's almost like this is being created. That is my theory on why you have this unrest all of a sudden in decent amounts of people. The mass media, as we'll discuss in a few minutes, involves the idea that it's sort of organized protesters and so forth, kind of like Seattle 1995 World Trade Center organization protests, and that certainly is probably going on too. But the large numbers I'm thinking are, according to this theory, where it's being sort of encouraged by the mass media to show there's no consequence. And we'll see some good evidence of that here as this video goes on. So again, I'm working from this other model where it appears that the mobs of protesters and, more importantly, rioters are created out of ordinary Americans, largely by mass media and the pandemic and the economic situation. Out of this atmosphere of pandemic looting and burning down cities, this huge mob, which could easily be detained. That you could use, when Trump came out and said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, what I thought he might have meant was non-lethal weapons, because that's what police officers usually use, unless they're being shot at with live bullets. Police officers will often use tasers and certain sound weapons, tear gas, so forth, non-lethals. Police officers easily could get these riots to stop with non-lethal weapons, but the non-lethal weapons are being sort of called inhumane forms of punishment and so forth. So instead of you shouldn't break into banks by smashing their windows and destroy stop signs, which is dangerous for people driving on the streets where they could get into crashes because there's no stop sign, or attacking police cars and turning over cars and police cars and so forth. Instead of that being the issue is instead, is it the case that the police officers are using excessive force if they were to, they can't even use non-lethal weapons. So in a sense, the police officers really have no power here, which promotes this mass pandemonium and rioting all over the place. Now, I know on the news, especially today, I'm recording this on Sunday, the 31st, there was a huge bit of information on the mainstream news about how they're saying there's these peaceful protests and then there's these other people. They may be professionally managed, coming from out of state and so forth, that are creating violence and disturbing the real protest. Now, we know that definitely seemed to happen in the WTO Seattle protests. A lot of documentaries that have been made that are very good on that. A very clear example of that. And that could be what's going on here. And President Trump seems to think that that's what's going on here. But in this video, as I said at the beginning, I'm only going to try to be empirical. I'm only going to try to go on what I have evidence for. And I don't know if I have evidence for that yet. That would be a very large scale example of what happened to the World Trade Organization, and would be in little cities or smaller cities like Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I don't know. That could be the case, but I'm only going with what I have evidence on, so I think the theory that I'm building here is better. So let's go back over this theory. Now look at this. Look at the title. Caught on camera, police explode in rage and violence across U.S. Now this is really interesting because they give a bunch of examples here. And the examples, a few of them don't even have video. It says caught on camera. There is no camera footage. And further, these aren't really, you can go watch them and they're really not that big of a deal. The first one is probably the worst, where a police officer takes off a fellow's sunglasses or something and pepper sprays him. Now, we don't know what's happening. There could have been reason for that. It does look a little weird, but who knows? Who knows what he just said to the police officer? What if he said, I'm going to kill you or something? Or I have a gun, I'm going to kill you? Who knows? And then the second one with the car ramming in the street, we already discussed that one above. That one appeared to be done where nobody really was hurt, and the police officers were clearly under threat, especially when police cars are being burned and tipped over. What if that was about to happen to their vehicle? And it did seem to be the ramming. Ramming is probably too strong of a word. Probably moving people out of the way with the car is a better description. But anyway, so the point is that, and you go through the rest of these examples, and they're really not good examples of exploding rage and violence of police officers caught on film. Now, is this evidence that the media is trying to foment violence? Because the mass media has been clearly saying that Trump's doing that. But I've seen other examples, quite a few actually. This is a good example of how it looks like the mass media is actually trying to stir things up. So, which plays into this theory that I'm going over, which I can re-sum up here real quick, is the idea that there's a broken down world system because of the pandemic. There's a lot of idle younger people who are not for the system, or they haven't felt the system work for them, if that's the right way to put it. And they could be even hungry or who knows what in a riot situation. And they've got reason in their mind to riot. And media, as we discussed briefly here a second ago, and we will in much with better examples in a moment, is coaxing them on to violence. And along with the pandemic, which could escalate, there's been little signals. People are saying, well, there's nobody up using social distancing here in all this protesting and rioting, so the pandemic's going to spread. So we could get an escalation of the pandemic, and there could be, for reasons I'll explain in a minute, be escalation of violence. This could lead to a breakdown of the world system, where a new system will need to be put in place, and that could be a one world system involving a one world religion, which would be the setting, the climate, which the Bible seems to involve possibly for the Antichrist. We'll go over that more. So there's this tactic here of the media is really creating this situation. That's kind of the point of this video. Now we know that the media is controlled by extremely wealthy people. Maybe 20, 30 people in the world control all this information. Really, even under 10 control the vast majority of it. And these are very questionable people who have really put out very bad media. You can just go through examples. The Iraq War. For years and years and years, we were told that this is a legitimate situation. First, it was because we thought they were terrorists. Then it was because there might be terror. First it was because supposedly the terrorists were connected to 9/11, and then it was because there might be terrorists in Iraq. Then it's because of Saddam Hussein, and then it ended up to be because we wanted to usurp the oil in Iraq. These are all well-known mainstream media issues. So that there's lots of questionable things. So there's the mass media is a business made for advertisers who pay the bills of the mass media, and for the agenda of the ultra wealthy people who own these companies, and who have very strong ties to the aforementioned trans-government entities sitting behind the governments of the world that control the governments of the world that we discussed earlier in the video. A famous example being the Project for the New American Century, around the time of 9/11, having the same address as Fox News. Interestingly, a well-documented issue. So according to this template, this tactic, to use the media to foment rebellion in a broken down, pandemically stricken youth of America. Now this, I don't know what will happen, we'll see in the future, but this sort of tactic that's out there that nobody's really thinking about could be used to escalate to really burn down large sections of cities, and this could shut down, I don't know where this, I don't want to have a slippery slope here, because here in Kalamazoo, where I live, there's really been no violence of any sort. There's been big protests and so forth, but they've been peaceful. So you wonder where this could go. But this template that's being used of scare the police officers to being able to use any force and sort of overlook the nature of the looters could be escalated as large as the sort of planned mass media, the corrupt mass media wants it to be. The big money mass media. So there's only a few people that, 20, 30 people that control all the information in the world, more or less. So the top-down structure of the mass media companies, where these people are in heavy alignment with corrupt trans-government agencies that have lots of control over the U.S. government. That's one of Trump's issues, where he's noticing this going on. Trump not being part of this sort of trans-government cartel that's out there, that this secret government that controls the world that's referred to in 2 Corinthians 4:4. And the kings of the earth rised up against the Lord and his Christ. Now that tells you that if that's going on then in the Bible, when Jesus was on earth, I just infer the idea that that's what's going on now. When Jesus was crucified, they had the fake Kafkaesque trial used to sentence Jesus. Now I just take that the Bible's giving us signals of how the world really works. We got paid off crowds, fake events. You've got government alliances where the governments of the world get together to rise up against God. See the verse there on your screen. So since the Bible is our template for reality, our scientific textbook to tell us how reality in every level and in every quadrant works, then I just conclude that if the Bible's telling us there are Kafkaesque shenanigans going on, then that's what's going on today like it was then. I just assume that that's what's going on now. 2 Corinthians 4:4 points to the behind the governments of the world is a satanic force. The devil is ultimately in control of the cultures of the world, and he has control by way of trans-government agencies that control the governments. And Trump's not part of this. I think it's pretty clear. I'm not sure exactly how he got elected, because the election, I go by the thesis that the elections are rigged because of Bush-Gore 2000. When I saw Bush-Gore 2000 happen with Miami-Dade County and the Chads and all that, people that are, over the age of 35 or 40 remember that very clearly, that stunning situation where the election was clearly rigged and nothing was really done about it. It was just sort of, we had to accept it. But it was not a secret. It was publicized. Now, since then, I haven't really had much faith in the voting system and just assumed that the elections are rigged. And I was sure Hillary was going to get in and beat Trump because she was ahead in the polls. The last several elections, whoever's ahead in the polls by 20 points or 20%, that is, or whatever, 10, 20% wins. And you don't, everybody says you're encouraged, Hillary Clinton, no, Barack Obama, vote, 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 everybody vote. That's they encourage you to vote. But nobody ever talks about, hey, let's make sure we count the votes, right? There's no discussion ever of counting the votes. Trump is the first person to ever bring that up, as far as I know, in his discussion lately about saying that mail-in votes are rigged votes. Mail-in elections are rigged elections. Of course, then everybody in the big money, corrupt, trans-government-controlled mass media, CNN and NPR and Twitter and everything else, they all come out and say, oh, that's crazy. When Trump correctly points out there's all kinds of obvious examples we can all look at where the mail-in votes have led to crazy corruption and fake election results. So, but anyways, that's another story of how in the world Trump got in. It's sort of miraculous that he did, because he was behind in the polls and it was coming off Barack Obama. And the government, the country's sort of in the mood for another alternative very liberal Democrat candidate. Hillary would have been perfect. So then when he got in, it was sort of against the trend of the previous several elections, which I just viewed as all rigged elections, where the person selected by those powers that have the capacity to count the votes, somehow their result didn't happen, and Trump got in. Trump clearly seems to be not part of that satanic cartel that is controlled by the satanic forces that are working behind the governments in secret of the world. Trump calls every day is talking about the fake news, and referring to CNN and so forth. On and on and on. The rigged elections. Trump is not in the dialogue of the rest of Washington and the mass media, and the mass media, including other Republicans, are in huge attack against him. It's very obvious to me Trump is not part of the cartel. That he's someone just like me or you, a billionaire who was able to get into office, and he, for some reason, is choosing to use his time as an ultra-wealthy person in his retirement to, instead of relaxing the beach with cocktails at his age, he's instead choosing to give a voice to people who can't have their voice heard because they don't have any political power. What I mean by that is he can come out and talk about rigged election and fake news and the other things he talks about all the time, every day. Trump is a real spokesman for the people. I don't understand some of his war stance and so forth, but it's almost like Trump is waking up as he goes through office here and is shocked by what he's seeing. So anyway, back to the point though. We almost have this situation where this template that's in place, where make the police officers scared and promote rioting, could be escalated as much as wanted, and it could be used to break down the economy further, as clearly with the pandemic was starting, the strange pandemic, because now the pandemic is escalating. I mean, I was just looking at the numbers lately of cases discovered, and there's not a real big slowdown of the pandemic. It's still here, but everything's opening back up. You know, when the pandemic started, it was this panic, close everything, airports and schools and everything, and then all of a sudden, let's open it back up when the pandemic is still here. But the point is, it doesn't make any sense. If you want to shut down the economy to get rid of the pandemic, why would you open up the economy before the pandemic is over? It's all, and here in Michigan, it's the governor. We're still in a stay-home order, but half the businesses are opened back up. All kinds of stuff. So nobody cares what the governor says. So it's a strange scenario. But the point is that there was this huge, don't even think, just panic and act and shut down everything reaction by governors and government when the pandemic started. Trump was clearly questioning it immediately, but the almost ubiquitous in the rest of the government, pervading all the opinions, was, yes, shut down everything. And with fear, most people agreed, at least right away, and then started questioning it 2, 3, 4 weeks into it. But the point is, there was a start to a shutdown of the economy. And you wonder if this template of promoting rioting and promoting police officers to back off, these forces of persuasion that are in place to lead to the events of the past week, if that could be used to further shut down the economy. I don't know how much that could be, but you can see a situation where that could be in place, where cities are burning, people are afraid to go downtown and so forth, and government building, Nashville's courthouse is burning down last night. People are afraid to go and do government work and so forth. So you wonder, so the point is you wonder what's going on. Is this a situation where society is being broken down and people will have so much fear, and there will be the breakdown of society in such a way where people will cry out for a new order of things, and where a new order will be set up, or we'll have some kind of new government in place where we have a one world government, a one world religion, which is that would be setting up the world for the Antichrist. So that's what I wonder what's going on here. And this amazing template that exists right now, the forces of persuasion being such that people are seeing that it's okay to riot, and the police are seeing it's not okay to use their normal enforcement. If I was to go to the Van Buren County Jail and start smashing a window, I think I'm going to get arrested, and it's going to be I'm going to be in jail for a while until they sort it out and what charges and so forth. That doesn't exist. Now it's just okay. So amazing sequence of events here. It's like everybody's caught. So talking about this terrifying times last night at Wood TV in Grand Rapids. Last night, it's almost like fear blinds, and nobody can think straight and so forth. So when we also have this situation where the world is being set up for a new order, where there is a breakdown going on. Now maybe this all just pass, but who knows? We'll see in the future. But you start to wonder: is there a template being set up where satanic forces be working behind the governments of the world are creating certain situations to give rise to a new order, which could give rise to, remember when Hitler, it was such a breakdown in Germany that Hitler could come on the scene and do crazy stuff, throw Jewish people in camps and promote all this weird behavior of washing bodies and stuff, just this crazy stuff that happened in Nazi Germany. When you have people that break down into states of fear, there's really no end to the madness and what people will do to go back to order. The level of fear can be so great that people's desire for order will make them act insane. So this is the kind of situation that is needed to set up a one world government and religion, where where somebody like the Antichrist can come in and rule the world. Now, so let's talk a little bit about what the Antichrist system will look like. And there's two things. So again, I'm talking only from the perspective of the Bible in this video. But there's only two things that really I want to talk about in general. And one, the Bible very clearly says the Antichrist is going to be some kind of pastor, church leader, which everybody's missing the boat on that. No churches that I know of or pastors or anybody's talking about that. It's clear as day in 2 Thessalonians 2. And secondly, the Bible even tells us in the book of Revelation, as we'll discuss in a second, that church leader will come out of the Catholic Church. That seems pretty much clear as day as well. This was an opinion of John Calvin, John Wesley, Martin Luther, Augustine. All those great theologians held that opinion that the Antichrist will be a pope.